Hey everybody, it's Glenda here from Cynically Glenda. I just want to talk to you about respect and how we value it and use it in today's society. When I was a kid, we had to respect our adults, our parents, our grandparents, authority figures like teachers and police officers and, when our parents, we were going anywhere, we were not allowed to just run amok. We had to stay with our parents. If we had to go through a door, we would always wait for our parents. Usually our father would open the door, let his wife go through, our mother, and then he would let us in. But he was always ahead of us. Something that was also common practice. If a couple or a family were walking down a street, the person closest to the road was always the male. He would have his children and his wife walk further away from that's the way it was done. A man would pull out a chair for a woman. He would open a door for her. There are some things like, I suppose these are manners more than respect, but a man would often pay for any outings like dates, but that's not necessarily the case nowadays. And I have always been of the belief that if a man can't afford to pay for both, then pay Dutch or go Dutch, especially on the first date, and so on and so forth. We look to our parents and our grandparents for guidance and advice, and we respected them for that. We understood that they had a life experience that we couldn't even comprehend. And in many societies, even today, many cultures today, the elderly, the older generation, the elders, are revered and respected because of their life experiences. And it was the same with someone who has a skill. He would pass that down to his son or a younger person or a younger woman. And we always showed them the respect because they were the master, they were the teacher, and we were the student. We respected each other's privacy. We respected each other's own space. We respected a person's right to an opinion or a religion they happen to follow, or we always had consideration, we always had respect for those around us. Like, for example, we didn't have to worry about the council putting up noise restrictions simply because we all considered our neighbours when it came to noise. We didn't have to call the police to get someone to turn the music down. Of course, there were exceptions to the rule where people were disrespectful, where people did, break the rules. Common courtesy, common respect, self-respect. We took care of our things. Our parents would buy us Christmas presents and, it'd be a bike, and we'd get a bike. That would be our big present, and then we might get a couple of other things, but they were usually small, like a doll or something. We didn't have thousands of dollars worth of presents, and our parents didn't bankrupt themselves or put themselves into debt for Christmas. You respected that your parents did the very best they could for you, and that when they told you that they couldn't afford something, you didn't throw a tantrum. You may have had a bit of a cry and felt like you were missing out, but, you know, when our parents told us, no, you can't have it, we respected that. And of course, there are situations where we're still struggling with respect, like for our Indigenous people. Whether it be the Australian Aborigines, the American Indians, the Indigenous South Americans, etc. They know the land better than we do because that is experience and knowledge that has been passed down from generation to generation. Here in Australia, we have a lot of bushfires, and a big thing that the Aboriginal people used to do, especially in really bushy areas, they would do what they called prescribed burning, so that then there wouldn't be any major bushfires. And now we have understood that this sort of thing, this prescribed burning is a good thing. But I honestly believe in my heart that our Indigenous people should be employed to do it, or they should be looked to for advice on how to do it. Now, there's not so much respect. We don't respect another's opinion. We don't respect anyone else's narrative. If we don't like what someone's saying, we just interrupt them. We don't listen to another's opinion. And it's become very reactive. We no longer respect one another. And that's kind of sad. You watch it on social media all the time. I was talking about chat forums and how there are little groups that like to tear shreds off influencers, content creators, celebrities, and they don't give a flying fuck whether they offend or they upset. They don't care. And they don't care if it's true or not. And we call each other names. We no longer can have a conversation like we used to at school, where we were taught how to debate, where you would have a group of students on one side of the argument and a group of students on the other, and then you would discuss the subject. And if you look at politics, exactly the same thing happens. Each politician, congressman, senator, etc., is given a certain amount of time to make their point. And I love that. But the funny thing is, you will now find people constantly interrupting them because they don't appreciate or respect the narrative. Allow them to make their point. Allow them to finish, and then you present yours. And maybe you'll change each other's lives by presenting both sides of the argument. I don't know. We considered other people's ethnicities and customs and so on and so forth. If we didn't know about it, we would ask questions, we would learn about it, instead of just poo-pooing it. And now we've gotten to the stage where if 1% of a particular group, whether it be the LGBTQ crowd or a religious group or a faith group or political group, instead of respecting their beliefs and values and giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, which again is about respect, we all lump them into one group, like all Muslims must be terrorists, therefore. No, they're not. The vast majority of them aren't. And the case recently with Israel and the Jewish community and the Palestinian community and so on and so forth. We think that all Jews are Zionists. No, they're not. And because of that confusion, the Jews are being vilified. And it's not the Jews that are the problem. Back at the turn of the previous century, when we went from the 1800s to the 1900s, there was a group that started, and they were the Zionists. And that was a political movement, and it started in Eastern Europe. I think Poland was considered, but it all started because of the Jews in Russia. Now, even today, the Jewish community in Russia are some of the poorest people in the country, and they are vilified by their own government. Now, the Zionist movement became as a result of people not agreeing with the mainstream Jewish religion. And now it has become something in and of itself, to the point where they have decided they want to reclaim their land and they don't care who they step over to get it. They started a whole movement after Israel was founded. Was it 1952 or 47? 40s and 50s anyway. And there was a political movement around about the time that decided they wanted to claim Israel as Jewish land. And that's where it started from. Not every Jew believed in it. There was a small minority. And then what happened was that there was that small minority of Jews that lived in the Palestinian Israeli area that took advantage of programs that were made available for Jewish resettlement. And the worst part about it, and the English and the Americans made it worse, they literally put Palestinian people, the Middle Eastern people, out of their homes, burned their homes down, committed violence against them. So hello. And it's sort of like we watched everything happen during the Second World War, where 6 million Jews were killed. And now we're watching the same thing happening in Palestine. And the Palestinian people are the ones that are suffering. Because unfortunately, we as humans, we are inherently flawed. And that's what you see on social media and that. Why there is such a lack of respect for people. There is such a lack of respect for the truth. There is a lack of respect for allowing someone to express their opinion and to have an opinion different to yours. We have no respect whatsoever for the truth. We have no respect for anyone's faith. We don't even find out about it anymore. We have lost common courtesy and respect. We have stalkers and people hacking because they think they have a right. In certain countries, racism has become so rampant that people don't care anymore. They don't keep it closeted away like they used to. If you want to be racist, fine, do whatever you want. But don't take it out on another person. Don't automatically exclude another person because you've been raised to believe that someone who doesn't have the same colour skin as you is a bad person or less of a human being than what you are. I'm going to look up some information about different cultures and how we show respect within their culture when it comes to meal times and that sort of thing, and going to other countries and respecting their customs. Like in the Middle East, it's always, particularly in very strong Islamic or Muslim countries, women should basically dress modestly. And in some of them, I think in Dubai, it's a good idea if you actually, otherwise you could be arrested, you don't swear, etc., etc., and that's fine. So anyway, that's it for today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.